Captain's log. July 29th, 1724. Morning. The sunrise was a dull orange glow on the horizon, casting a weak light over the ship. The fog that had wrapped us tightly last night still lingered, clinging to the water like a restless spirit that refused to move on. There was an unnatural chill in the air, even though the sun was creeping higher, burning away the mist with agonizing slowness. I slept little, if at all, last night. The groaning sound beneath the Kraken's revenge has not ceased. If anything, it has grown louder, more persistent, as if something below the surface was stirring, its attention fixed on us. It vibrates through the timbers, unnerving the crew. They whisper of sea monsters, old curses, and the spirits of the damned. I know better than to laugh at them. Whatever is out here is no mere superstition. We met early this morning to discuss our next move. The crew, though they don't say it outright, want to leave this cursed island behind and sail for safer waters. I can't say I blame them, but something holds me back. Captain Shank's ship, the prey for Mojo, is here, or what remains of it. And I know Shanks well enough to believe he didn't leave without hiding his treasure somewhere. For all his cunning and brutality, Shanks loved two things more than life itself: his ship and his gold. I'm not one to leave riches buried under someone else's curse. David is in agreement, though I see the weariness in his eyes. The jungle took its toll on him, as it did on all of us, but the promise of Shanks's fortune keeps us moving. We've decided to return to the island, deeper this time, to search for clues. Gold or no gold, I need to understand what happened here. The men are hesitant but loyal. Fear clings to them as thickly as the fog, but greed burns through their caution. I see it in their eyes. Shank's treasure has infected their minds, perhaps even mine. 10 men will join David and me in heading inland. The rest stay behind, guarding the Kraken's revenge. If the groaning beneath the ship grows louder, or if the ship starts moving on its own, they are to leave no matter the cost. I don't want to sacrifice the entire crew if the island or whatever haunts it decides to drag us all to hell. Midday. We landed again on the black sand beach, the longboat sliding up against the shore with a soft hiss. The fog had lifted somewhat, revealing the jagged cliffs and dense jungle ahead. The island looked no less menacing in the daylight, but the men seemed emboldened by the sun's faint glow. Perhaps they thought it might protect them from the unseen terrors lurking within the jungle. Splitting into 2 groups, I led one party inland with David, following what we hoped might be the trail of Shank's crew. The second party remained by the shoreline, scouring it for any clues to Shank's fate or the location of his treasure. I would have preferred not to divide our forces, but time is pressing on us. The island's secrets weigh heavily, and I feel an increasing urgency, as though something malevolent watches us. The jungle swallowed us up within moments, its thick green walls closing around us. The air was stifling and heavy with the smell of rot. The groaning sound, quieter inland but still present, seemed to pulse through the earth beneath our feet. The deeper we ventured, the worse it became. The jungle felt wrong, as though it was not a natural place. The trees twisted and curled in unnatural ways, their thick roots snaking across the ground like tendrils, and the undergrowth was littered with strange bones. Some animal, some human, none identifiable. The men stayed close, weapons drawn, their faces pale. They too felt the island's strange, dark energy. David walked beside me, his eyes darting into the shadows cast by the towering trees. I could tell he sensed something too, though he said nothing. The oppressive atmosphere was getting to all of us. Then we heard it. At first it was barely a whisper. Faint voices carried on the breeze, barely audible over the rustle of leaves and the distant groaning. As we moved deeper into the jungle, the voices grew louder, clearer. French. There was no mistaking the language. Rough, angry words, as though the sailors were arguing. I motioned for silence and we moved forward cautiously, creeping through the thick foliage, weapons at the ready. The voices were coming from just ahead, though we still could not see their source. We pushed into a clearing, and there they were, at least a dozen French sailors standing around what remained of a camp. At first glance, they looked like any other group of stranded men. Their uniforms were ragged, their faces drawn and weary. But there was something unnatural about the way they moved, repeating the same gestures over and over. One sailor was endlessly pulling at a torn rope, another was pacing, shouting in frustration, though his voice was faint and garbled. It was like watching men trapped in a dream they could not wake from. David stepped closer, his face pale. "They're ghosts," he whispered. "They are caught in some kind of endless loop." I wanted to argue, to tell him it was madness, but I couldn't. Deep down, I knew he was right. The French sailors we were looking at weren't alive. They were echoes of men long dead, trapped by whatever curse had befallen this place. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, and the groaning sound grew louder, more insistent. The jungle seemed to press in on us from all sides, the trees creaking and groaning as if they were alive, watching us. The men backed away, their faces pale with terror. "We need to leave," David said urgently. "Now." I didn't need convincing. We turned and fled back the way we had come, the voices of the French sailors fading into the distance behind us. The groaning sound followed us, growing louder and louder with each passing moment, as if something enormous was stirring beneath the island's surface, waiting to awaken. By the time we reached the beach, the sun was sinking low in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows across the black sand. The second group of men was already waiting for us, their faces grim. They had found more wreckage along the shoreline, pieces of the prey for Mojo, along with several human remains. There was no sign of Shanks or of his treasure. We rowed back to the Kraken's revenge in silence, the weight of what we had seen pressing down on us like a suffocating shroud. But as we approached the ship, something strange caught my eye. Off to the side of the bay, nestled within a secluded cove, was a ship. It had not been there before. Its sails were tattered, hanging limply from rotting masts. The ship radiated a dark energy, much like the island itself, pulsating with a malevolent force. I suspect this might have been the ship following us, always watching our every move. "What in God's name is that?" David muttered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. I didn't answer him. I couldn't. The ship in the cove felt ancient, cursed, a thing of nightmares. As we drew nearer, I saw the flag that flew from its mast, a grotesque skull with long, curling horns. I had seen that symbol before. Legend told of the Goulon, a crew of cursed sailors doomed to sail the seas for eternity, never resting, never dying. Their ship was said to be a vessel of darkness, a soul stealer. It was said that those who crossed paths with the Goulon were marked for death. Only time awaited what would our fate be. I get ready for the night and wonder, what will tomorrow bring?